Hello, everyone, and welcome to Political Fixer Live. I'm your host this evening, Shauna Presley Vircher, and after just a couple of technical gremlins, then we got going this evening. We have a lot to share with you, a lot of news, and we have a special announcement this week. We have some things, an initiative that is one of the biggest things that we've undertaken yet. So I hope that you'll be on for the end of the program as we discuss that and the ways that you can get involved. Okay, let's dive in with what our stories are this evening. Now, before we do, I just want to welcome everyone that's new to the Political Fixer family. If you haven't been here before, here's how it works. We're going to talk about some of the top headlines, also some of the headlines that maybe we feel should have been covered a little bit more closely and what they all mean. And of course, we're going to invite you to weigh in with your comments and questions. And don't worry, our Political Fixer audience and what we call our family are great at jumping in and getting your questions answered, sharing information if you're unfamiliar with a story. And we have our Political Fixer team members as well. So definitely say hi to them. They'll be keeping things moving. And those team members, especially Sarah, who you all know, and J Robot, they're going to be making sure that I see as many of your questions as possible. Now, there's no cost for participating. We're just happy that you're sharing your time with us, but we do appreciate the love. So, any of the likes that you give to this, we certainly appreciate it. Definitely makes it feel like it's worth it and it gives us something positive to look forward to in these dark times. Okay, so what topics are we going to be talking about tonight? Um, First of all, Holy Time Machine, Batman. We have not one, not two, but three headlines that came out in recent days that make us feel like we went back in time by decades. So we're going to share those stories, and I recommend that you have a calming presence, like a nice furry kitten or puppy to pet or your favorite glass of wine or something, because it's hard to believe that these stories are happening in this year of our interweb 2025. Also, breakups are hard. We're going to be talking about how Elon Musk has been doing since his infamous breakup with 47. He's having a bumpy time. And I got to tell you, spoiler alert, we kind of love to see it. So, we're going to be talking about what's been happening in Musk world and how everything seems to be going wrong his way lately. And then we're going to go into a story that I think is important in sharing. It ties to one of the largest headlines that is gripping the world right now. And we're going to talk to you about something that we're going to do about it, but we need your help. So that's going to be the third story that we cover this evening is our latest initiative and how you can get involved. Okay. Normally I don't like to mock someone while they're down, but I got to say we're still living with so much of the damage that Musk and his Doge counterparts did to our government. And I feel like we should talk about how no matter how much access he's gotten, how much power he's tasted, how much money he has, he is still struggling to just be like a normal human. He really, really is. Let me do a quick rundown of just some of the things that have happened to Musk just over the last several days. Let's start with the thing that brought him to the dance, Tesla. Tesla reported a 13.5% drop in earnings over the second quarter of 2025 compared to last year. Their revenue has taken a huge hit. The Cybertruck is a complete fail, and retooling the basic sedan that they were hoping that people would gravitate towards has not worked. Right now, customers are not returning, leases are expiring, they're starting to give them back. It still has the stigma. And on top of that, let's not forget what actually may have contributed greatly to this breakup to begin with 47. The EV tax credits are set to expire. So, all of that plus increased competition, and his Tesla corporation is not doing well. But there's not doing well, and we had to apologize to our shareholders on your behalf. Not doing well. All right. SpaceX is somehow doing even worse. They have a lawsuit from a former supervisor saying safety neglect. Yeah, they've violated like every safety law there is. We actually did a report on this live talking about how they aren't even letting people know what's happening to rocket fuel or how they've obtained it or where they're storing it. Cranes are falling out of the sky, explosions are happening every time they take off, it seems like. So, yeah, safety neglect. There was a global Starlink outage that disrupted service for a ton of users around the planet. And they had a proposed project with the Air Force over environmental concerns. Plus, they had to place almost like a caveat warning to shareholders saying, hey, listen, your investment may take a hit because of some of the things he said in public politically. I mean, how do you not know what he said? But the fact that they have put this in writing in a financial document, that's to cover their own liability for his mouth. Not good, right? So, all right, we're going to keep going on the Musk train. And if you're just joining us on Political Fixer Live, we are talking about how Musk is not doing so well during the breakup, since the breakup, and the things that are going wrong couldn't happen to a worse guy. And if any of you have your thoughts on Musk or any of his companies, please feel free to share. Keep it PG, please, people. That new political party he was going to start, the America Party, turns out that was more of a concept of a plan. So nothing's happened. He's basically tweeted about it a few times. Thank you for the mustache and hat in case I need to go in disguise after talking about one of the richest men on the planet. And right now, it doesn't even seem like he might follow through with this. So he's like kind of giving up on politics right now, except for the occasional mean girl tweet. This happened just before all of this started, but Grok, his chat bot on Twitter/X, got into just a wee bit of trouble after somehow believing that he was a Nazi, meaning the AI bot thought he was a Nazi. He named himself, oh, I have to get this correct. He named himself something that included Hitler. Mecha Hitler, MECHA. He named himself this. He praised him. He started saying derogatory things and anti Semitic things. So they basically had to apologize for the robot Nazi that they built. So that's great for advertisers. If any of you have never been in sales or marketing, let me tell you something that companies love, and it's when you're going to just blanket offend people on all the time, 24 hours a day. Don't worry, folks. This robot is available to offend you 24 hours a day and your potential customers. So, Twitter is completely tanking with their sponsors, and their CEO had to leave. Like, basically, listen, she helped create this monster literally, but she was out the door, and it got that bad that she gave up that paycheck. And then this is possibly one of my favorite parts of the Musk story and why I thought to bring it to you. Did any of you know that he opened a diner? That's right. They opened a Tesla diner. It was opened in California. It opened exactly at 4:20 because he's a 15-year-old boy, and the diner is supposed to be this futuristic style supercharger station. It's supposed to be where you can come and charge your electric vehicle, get served some food by a robot, and kind of step into the Jetsons era, because this guy needed another project, right? But anyway, go ahead with yourself. So this just opened about 8 or 9 days ago, and it's already completely becoming a fail. It's the kind of thing that you couldn't write. Like, the idea that this guy opened a futuristic robot diner on top of everything else, they've caught him storing, well, not him, the people running the restaurant, to be clear. They've caught the restaurant storing perishable and frozen foods outside on the pavement in the hot California sun. There's been complaints about, inaccuracy. Apparently, the robot's not the best server, and there's long lines. But there were two headlines that caught my attention that I just had to share with you. Gail points out, Gail K. Artistry says it's been protested nonstop. Good on all of you for doing your civic duty there. Apparently, some patio furniture went awry and just started flying up because, again, this guy doesn't practice safety standards with rocket fuel. They're not going to practice the most rigorous of standards when tying down and their patio furniture and all of the like. And it hit a family. The family had to dive over the baby. They were injured. They're not now talking about a lawsuit. So people are going into this diner, and their safety is being harmed by furniture just being thrown at them, essentially. No serious injuries, or we wouldn't be laughing. Um, and then he had this idea that they would be delivering food using some of this really great driverless technology from Tesla. Only one problem. The Teslas can't pass the safety standard tests that they have in California. And he doesn't want to use any of the competitors' robot taxis. So Musk had a brilliant idea. He decided that he was going to invent chauffeured food. So you mean like Uber Eats, where like a human drives the food to you? How did we think this guy was a genius? How? Okay. How? So he invented Uber Eats, apparently. It's just been a rough week. Sammy says, good grief. Elon's luck has apparently run out. Listen, the guy's still sitting on wads of cash and apparently 182 children. I'm being only slightly hyperbolic. I'm sure he's going to be fine, but it would be nice if he would just kind of pick an actual lane of something he's going to contribute to society rather than some big next destruction, right? You've got Tesla imploding with their shares, and basically the Cybertruck has become the symbolism of being a MAGA extremist. Even people that bought the truck prior to all of this are now having to return it or put apologetic bumper stickers on it. So Tesla is tanking, and he's offended all these other countries with Starlink contracts. So a lot of the Starlink contracts in places like Canada are being canceled. SpaceX keeps exploding because they keep cutting staff and cutting corners. And now you've got, his newest baby, which is Twitter, that's completely alienating all of the supporters and sponsors. And now he's got a diner. So if you want to experience more of this lovely failure, then have I got a surprise for you. Gail says, OMG, epic fail. Hoosier Mama says, if he needs another project, perhaps try Parenthood. I don't even think he could pick his kids out of a lineup. And at some point, he might need to. Yeah, so we've got so much more to talk about, but I wanted to start the evening after a tough week with a moment of brevity. And the good news is, even people that I want you to stop for a second and think about where we were talking about Musk in February and March. When he was going in with Doge, he was given the keys to the kingdom, to our government, unlimited access, it seemed like, to all of our personal treasury data, all of our business data, all of these different departments, right? He was cutting USAID funding that is still a travesty, that is literally costing hundreds of thousands of lives because of a grudge he has from his gem mine parents in South Africa during the apartheid days. This guy has done tremendous harm, and it is not an exaggeration to say that some of that harm has resulted directly in loss of life around the globe. He seemed like this beast we were never going to get rid of. He wasn't elected, so we couldn't vote him out. They weren't saying no, and no one really understood him when he would say all of these half-witted techno things and try to sound smarter than everyone else. So Congress just went along with it. And now the guy is not welcome in the White House. No one's really reading him on Twitter. 47 and his ilk are on Truth Social. Democrats are largely on Blue Sky and other platforms, so no one's listening to him. His businesses are tanking, and yeah, he has a ton of money, but still not infinite resources. So it's nice to see how someone that seemed like a Goliath is suddenly starting to fall. Suddenly seems like, oh, wait a minute, maybe this guy is beatable. So that is what the topic is. Welcome to Joe Eclectic and so many others of the Political Fixer family. Sammy says, what's scary is how fast so much damage has already happened. I agree, Sammy. I feel like the last 6 months has felt like 6 years. I want to say hi to Marlene ML. I see her sending like some really cool emojis. That's pretty awesome. And I want to thank you all for the gifts. We're already at over 8,000, 8.3 thousand likes. So thank you so much. If you're just joining us, we were talking about how Musk is not doing so well since the breakup. But we have a couple of other stories that we definitely want to weigh in on. I wanted to start a little bit light for you, though, again, positive and, in my opinion, meaningful. Before we dive into our next topic, which is the time machine topic, we're going to talk about some things with that in just a second. But I also want to tease for you that at the end of this program, we're going to be spending a little bit more time than usual on our third segment, because I'm going to tell you a story that I think is important and leads into what we're going to talk about, including one of the biggest stories around the world right now. And more importantly, I'm going to talk about the initiative that we have just launched today. You all are the first ones to hear about it. We're going to need your help, and we're going to tell you what we're going to do about it. So, talking about David slaying Goliath, for any of my fellow Sunday schoolers out there, then this is a chance for us to make a huge difference, not just in our lives, but in the lives of millions of women and girls. So we'll be talking about that soon after this next segment. All right, let's dive into our time machine segment. I had a series of stories just hit me in the face that you would swear could not be happening in today's day and age. And yet, this is where we are. We have gone backwards in time. So, I'm going to share three quick headlines with you that you may have missed and offer them up for discussion because I get that, as Sammy says, it's amazing how quickly all this happened. But at the same time, we've kind of been in a car crash scenario where we're determined to just erode people's rights for quite some time now. We can blame it on 47, but there's a lot of people that had a hand in this, and those gross fruits are starting to be sown for sure. Okay, so let me dive into these headlines. First of all, let's go to Tennessee. I know Tennessee, but listen, I'm not letting anybody off the hook. It's I grew up in a tiny town in Texas with around 16,000 people. Okay. You had to pay money, which most of us did not have, to call long distance. You couldn't even order a pizza because it was across the railroad tracks and we lived on the wrong side of the tracks. Literally, we were isolated. You could not do anything in that town. You couldn't afford to drive and go anywhere. There was no wall. There wasn't even mall. There was not even a Walmart. Isolated, isolated. I get things being much different in rural areas and different parts of the country then. We have internet, we have cable TV, people have access. With some exception, but very limited exception, you have exposure to the outside world. There's no excuse for some of this. Let me know if you agree with me. Those are just my thing. I think we cannot keep letting these southern states off the hook. We cannot. All right. Let me know what you think. Tennessee, a doctor denied a woman prenatal care. Would anyone like to guess why? I am not saying she wanted to terminate the pregnancy. I'm saying the woman wanted checkups and vitamins and ultrasounds, but she was not married. That's right. He denied her pre medical care because it went against his Christian values, in quotes. She's 35 years old. She had to go to Virginia to get medical care for her pregnancy because the doctor claimed religious exemption. She's been with her partner, not that it matters, for 15 years. They've just chosen not to get married. And so was denied medical care. She went to the town hall to raise awareness of this. And this is where I want to give this woman a lot of credit because it's one thing to have this happen and to realize when you have a person speaking in a position of authority. She did not cower in shame. She did not accept what he said about her and the aspersions he was casting about her moral character. She didn't take that to heart. She fought for herself and went and demanded care somewhere else. So right away, that is amazing. And that is strength that unfortunately not everyone has. But she went miles past that. She went to a town hall in Jonesboro, Tennessee, and made it public what he did and named names. And she also says that she is filing a complaint, or she has filed complaints, multiple, with the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance, which regulates all business licenses, and the American Medical Association. She also tried to call her senator, who's Marsha Blackburn, so good luck with that. She is trying to let people know what's going on. Yes, about this particular doctor, but bigger than that, this is a fairly new law in Tennessee. So the law is called the Tennessee Medical Ethics Defense Act. And it basically allows medical providers to opt out of any procedures that conflict with their conscience. Okay, now think about that. This doesn't even have to be something that's specifically in the Bible or another religious text. It doesn't have to go against what you think is a mainstream lifestyle or not. Anything against your conscience. So let's say you are in an emergency room and you've just been suspected of committing a crime. What happened to the Hippocratic Oath of the doctors have to try to save your life no matter what? That apparently just went out the window. Let's say that you are trying to get care for your child, but your child is wearing something or has a different haircut or maybe wears too much makeup or different clothing than what this doctor thinks the gender of your child should wear, or whatever. Maybe they're the wrong skin color or a different religion, or because they caught you praying in the lobby. It doesn't matter. If they disagree at all, they can deny you care. Gail is bringing up do no harm first question mark. No, apparently do any harm you want, because that outweighs your conscience of how you feel about the patient, outweighs your duty to care for that patient. That is according to how the Medical Ethics Defense Act is being interpreted as of now. It is a very recent law, just went into effect in late April. So far, this is just the start of this. All right, this law is new. This woman came forward. Luckily, this came across to our media attention so that this overall situation can come to our attention. Now, granted, the US senators are not responsible for those laws, but the Tennessee legislators are. And as perspective, they spent time passing the law where doctors could deny care, but Tennessee also has one of the highest mortality rates of pregnant women in the entire country. Out of every 100,000 women that is pregnant, 41 of them passes away, which is a staggeringly high amount. Usually one or two is still like nothing's acceptable. We don't ever want anyone to be harmed, but 41 out of every 100,000 women passes away when they are pregnant in Tennessee. Okay, so they have bigger fish to fry, and yet you're denying medical care of a woman who is unwed. We checked with the Center of Disease Control, and these numbers are pre 2025, so we consider them reliable. Would anyone like to guess approximately what percentage of women who deliver children in the United States are not married? How many unwed mothers are there? Is this a 2% issue, a 98% issue? Would anyone like to guess what percentage you believe, no fair Googling, that you believe are unwed out of all of the women who give birth in the United States? Joe Eclectic is guessing 50%. Um, Renee 1421 says, as an RN, if an MD did this to my patient, I would lose my job right then and there. Hell no. Love that, Renee. Oh, you guys know it. It is 40%. Dog named Ellie got it fast. Linny the Pooh, 40%. User 7809 guessed 48. You were close. Gail, 40%. Kathy's weighing in. You guys are so fast with this. Yes, 40%. Two out of every five. If you're seeing five women sitting in a room waiting to go see their doctor and all of them pregnant, chances are two of them are unwed. Again, not that it should matter. So 40% of them are in danger of losing access to any prenatal care if laws like this continue. And laws like this tend to grow like kudzu. They just stake their claim in one backward state, and then they just grow from there and infect the rest of us until ultimately we are where we are with the government. So that's our first time machine story, that apparently we're shaming and denying care of unwed mothers. I feel like I need to like listen to Madonna's Papa Don't Preach on repeat. Like, what are we even doing right now? Second time machine story to keep this moving. And welcome to those of you who are just joining us on Political Fixer Live. We're capturing some of the nation's biggest headlines and some of the headlines that you may have missed, and we're opening them for conversation. A dog named Ellie says, I'm a teacher, 40% tracks for several years. That does make sense. And Lenny the Pooh is bringing up the married women that might want out of their marriage, which is a very real situation for a number of people, particularly in violent situations. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of people that are weighing in on. Apparently, some of you have researched this topic before. I was a little bit shocked at how high the number is of women who are unwed who have children. Not for any moral reason. It just seems to me like with different options that are out there, raising a child is very difficult, no matter how amazing they might be. It's still very difficult, even with a support system. Doing it alone or as a single parent, I really admire it. It's, again, something to be admired, not admonished. Crazy to me. So backwards. All right, our second time machine story. We're picking on people in drag again. We're picking on people in drag again, and it's getting even worse. Let me give you some context for this because people might be like, well, yeah, but the LGBTQ community, I mean, that's been in the headlines recently, right? Yes, it has been in the headlines recently, but let's have a moment of clarity here. The Stonewall riots, which happened in New York where, they were basically essentially protesting against police raids of a very popular gay bar. That's kind of an oversimplification, but it was kind of the tipping point, right? Those Stonewall riots, the reason we have Stonewall Democrats in the LGBTQ community, 1969, doing some math here. That's a long time ago. Bigger perspective, pop culture. I understand that sometimes society moves slower than societal change in general or people pushing back and progressive movements. I understand that. But pop culture is a good indicator of where we are. And on network television in 1980, a young two guys had their own series. Two, at the time, unknown actors starred in a series where they dressed up as women. Why? Because they wanted cheaper rent, and the place they wanted to live in would only rent to women. That series was called Bosom Buddies, with a theme song by Billy Joel that's extremely catchy, and it kickstarted a young actor's career in particular. No offense to Peter Scolari, but some of you probably have heard of Tom Hanks. It was his first big TV breakout role. Tom Hanks, Mr. American actor, was got his start dressing as a woman in drag on network television in 1980. And some of us, that might not sound like a long time ago. That's 45 years. That's 45 years. Okay. Um, Kathy's saying I loved that show. Love Tom Hanks. Sarah's weighing in. Marlene saying she remembers that. Okay, so we've been talking about this for a minute. The idea of men dressing up as women, some of them for creative expression, some of them for emotional expression, and some of them for comic laughs. This has been happening since essentially the beginning of time. We know since the Greeks at least, right? But the Florida Attorney General says nay. Attorney General James Althmeyer has now escalated a war essentially against a restaurant in Vero Beach, Florida called the Kilted Mermaid. Why? Because they hosted a drag brunch, the same drag brunch that they've been hosting to raise awareness and funds for the LGBTQ community for over 10 years. They hosted a drag brunch. He is criminally prosecuting them. Prosecuting them. It's going further. He says that it violates Florida's law banning drag shows and adult live performances. That law, by the way, my understanding is it was blocked, but whatever. He says it has to do with the perversions of demented adults. Hey, watch how you talk about Tom Hanks here, sir. And the owner of said restaurant, the Kilted Mermaid, happens to be the vice mayor of the community, Linda Moore. So not only is he going after Moore and the Kilted Mermaid, but he also is seeking surveillance video, employee work schedules to go after employees that were working shifts during that time, guests lists, and any documentation and security testimony about any of the guests. What year are we in that you are surveilling a private business establishment because they have men dressed as women? How are we doing this? Marlene says Gestapo. Listen, I have strong words for this. I have opinions on this, but not the least of which, forget how awful it is that you're bullying a local restaurant and deciding to there's actual crime that's been happening in Florida, which is a spoiler of some of the stuff we're going to be talking about later. Actual crime happens in Florida pretty regularly. Part of that is because of an intensely growing population. Part of it is because we have very disconnected legal services that don't always communicate with each other well. We're a state where a lot of people move in from different parts of the country. It is really easy for someone to come here and hide if they want to do ill towards someone else. And our institutions are broken, fundamentally broken. So we're basically a corruption capital. Think of how many seniors are in the state of Florida ready for a con artist to come and try to swindle. This is a true quick story for you. I once was trying to get some part time work. This is when I was young. Either we had just gotten married or I was saving for our wedding. So this is years and years ago. And I answered an ad for a call service, like basically a customer service line. And I was going to go work an hourly job, clock in, clock out, and do phone sales of some sort. Well, it turned out that the job was you were supposed to look in the obituaries. This is true. And find people who had just lost a spouse, then find their phone number in the phone book, just to date myself a little, and then get them to sign up for a bunch of contracts for dance lessons that they couldn't get out of. We were preying on widows and widowers is what they wanted me to do. I lasted less than 30 minutes. I think that was a record. I've quit a lot of jobs, usually in very Julia Sugarbaker fashion, I will admit it, but I think that was my fastest one. When I realized what was going on, I was like, "Nope." And then just left, right? Which was kind of embarrassing because you're telling everybody like, "First job today." Nope, not so much. Not so much. So, I'm using that as an example because that's the kind like modern day, it's been updated. By the way, later that dance studio did eventually get shut down for fraud, but it was like years and years and years and years, right? That happens all the time in Florida, right? We're ripe for it. Point is, this attorney general could pursue any of this actual crime. He could make it his life's mission to, I don't know, help someone, pick anyone, an orphan, a cat, a grandma, anyone. He could do any of that, and yet he doesn't. He picks on small business owners and those in drag. Again, for this like deviant lifestyle that Tom Hanks practiced on network television 45 years ago. Oh my goodness. So welcome again to the Political Fixer Live. We are in the middle of our second segment of the evening. We're going to go into our third segment in just a bit, where we're going to talk about something that is a very serious topic, but the good news is there's something you can do about it. But this segment, if you're just joining us, is about stories that we thought we found in a time machine. We started this segment talking about the woman who couldn't get prenatal care in Tennessee because she's an unwed mother. Then we moved on to the Florida Attorney General prosecuting the deviant lifestyle of people in drag having a brunch. And now this one might take the cake because I got to say, even from someone who grew up in a small town in Texas, it's been a minute since I've heard this one. Um, there is a group in Arkansas that has now set up an all white town. They call themselves Return to the Land, and they have secluded an area in the northeastern Arkansas Ozarks. Um, and they describe themselves as a private membership association for people with, quote, traditional views and European ancestry. Not all European ancestry. Um, it's like this idea that all Europeans are white. It's insane to me. But okay, just also they reject forced integration. So not only do you need to be white, you have to be Christian. I'm sure their version of Christian. Don't know what that would be. You cannot be LGBTQ. If you are a woman, you need to agree to do the chores and raise the children. So none of you career women are welcome. So leave all of those womanly thoughts at home. And they describe to themselves as a white nation or a white town. Um, they have about 40 residents so far. And the depressing thought is that when I was Googling to prepare for this story, I wanted to make sure I had all of the data correct. And when I started to Google all white town in Arkansas, Google auto corrected me and said, "Do you want to know the location?" No, Google, I don't. But it terrifies me how many people must be asking that question for the wrong reason. Um, Gail's bringing up Trad Wives, Gilead, yes, reference to Handmaid's Tale. How boring with no diversity. Tell me where so I never go there is what Cassandra St. Clair says. Who's Your Mama says, I feel like we're living in the Twilight Zone. Renee brings up a good point. Have them all in one spot so we know where they are. Just so you know, there's a couple of things. First of all, it has already come before an investigation in Arkansas, and surprise, surprise, in the first round of their investigation, they found that nothing was wrong. This is again the state that Sarah Huckabee Sanders governs, so it's not surprising there. Their comments are extremely disgusting. I'm not going to repeat them, but they go into some pretty explicit detail about what their thoughts are about other people. So, yeah, again, is this a time machine? Because I can't believe that we have people that are just proudly saying for open society, yeah, I'm a racist. I mean, I can logically, when you look at the progression of time, I can logically, and I understand that this has always existed. It's just now we're getting more of it faster and in more depth because of technology and 24-hour news cycles, et cetera, et cetera. I understand all of that logically, but to look at a person that is supposedly a functional human, and again, this is what they decide to do with their lives, is just, yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's ultimately going to be found to be illegal? Who's going to challenge it? Like, I thought about this because to challenge this, I think you have to have some sort of standing. Is there anyone that's like, yeah, I'd rather live there? I also have the question, and maybe some of you can answer this because I know some of you are saying, um, that you want to stay away from there and, all this other stuff. But like, is this something that you would want to sue to stop them, or would you rather kind of have a heads up and put them all in one place, right? Is someone going to try to start a town that only another certain ethnicity or minority can live in? I don't know. I don't know how crazy this is going to get, but I just find it ridiculous. A question I have is, how are they earning their money? Because if you have this town, are you creating jobs? Do you have like this little racist R us store that people can get like really offensive t-shirts in? Like, what is your commerce? What are you doing to make money? So Joe Eclecti says there are small towns like this all across the country. I mean, yes and no. Alice says I won't be going. Mark that off of Alice's RV tour of America. She will not be going to the Return to the Land commune, which is good because Alice, if you were, we'd probably have to send somebody in after you because it sounds pretty scary. Jack says they're trying to start one in Missouri. Yes, definitely. Cassandra reiterates it's like the Twilight Zone. Joe Eclectic wants to remind everyone there are still sundown towns, towns that it is not considered safe to go to if you are of anything but a Caucasian persuasion. And I grew up having to know about those towns. Thankfully, my community was extremely diverse. I'm extremely grateful for that. And we knew about sundown towns. There were some within about an hour's drive of us that we were warned not to say, not to go to. So, Return to the Land sounds like farming. It also sounds like a really, kitschy 1980s dinosaur Saturday show. Wasn't there something like that where they got lost in the land and they had to see dinosaurs? Anyway, time machine. Okay, if you're just now joining us on Political Fixer Live, we've been talking about Musk and how he has not been doing so well since the breakup with 47, and we've been talking about headlines that have serious implications. We might be calling some of them out with some brevity here, but some of that is just smiling to keep from crying. The implications of these stories, let's not forget, are extremely serious. When you mainstream racism, it means that it makes it acceptable to not only do microaggressions, but actual aggressions and hateful acts. You start to This has been studied and studied and studied. It filters out of those types of towns, working our way backwards, right? This makes everything less safe for everyone when these towns are allowed to exist, and when we are allowed to otherize and dehumanize and declare others as second class citizens that don't have the same rights or ability to go somewhere as someone else. It does pose a threat to everyone because it's not just tacit authority. They've been given legal authority so far to do this. As far as the situation with the drag brunch, this is exactly what the LGBTQ community has been screaming about and screaming about. I know some people were frustrated during the election, wondering, why are we spending so much time talking about trans people and trans athletes? They're just this much of the population. And so many people were saying, this is a slippery slope. They will come after all of us. And sure enough, it's already starting to happen. And we haven't even covered some of the darker stories about what's been happening to members of the LGBTQ community that has skyrocketed. These violent incidences have skyrocketed since this administration. Prior to this administration, Florida had a really tragic and distinct leadership in the worst way. And the fact that Florida, for years, consistently has been number one in teen homelessness. And the reason is largely because teens who either come out or discovered to be gay or queer, they are then kicked out of their homes or have to leave because of abuse. This has been happening. And now the government is aiding in otherizing and saying that these people have moral depravity. This is going to make a lot of people less safe. And then we're talking about literal life and death with infant mortality and maternal mortality and denying people medical care because of your ridiculous belief of what a family should look like should only look like something that you saw in 1950s cartoons. It's ridiculous, and yet it's going to cost people lives, right? So we talk about it with some brevity, and that's because they're very tough topics and we can't be angry all the time. I understand that, but they do have a seriousness to them, right? So, Cassandra has been kind enough to remind us that we have another story that we promised to get to. And I want to take a moment and lead into this story. This is our big initiative that we're going to be talking about. For those of you just joining us, and welcome to so many of our Political Fixer family members. I so appreciate you. Let me just do a couple of call outs really fast. We have Joe Eclectic says about one of those stories, Florida is like about 50 years behind the rest of the country, particularly in the rural areas. We have new fan club members. I will be honest and say I do not fully understand what that means, but I appreciate you. Right now we have Bye Bippity Boppity Boo. Love that. Love all of that. And Lainey. Plus we have Robin, Mia, Stephanie, Renee, Lainey, and Cassandra online giving us lots of love and lots of gifts. And we have Joe Eclectic apparently, according to the team members, you have been sharing this live up a storm, and we really appreciate that. Um, also, so we've got a lot of people with different comments on the stories. I love the fact that you guys are so on top of the statistics. Sarah's pointing out how many of you are getting the trivia questions right, and including the fact that 40% of women who have children are estimated to be unmarried in this country, for what it's worth. Not that it should matter. But now I want to bring on something that we've been working on. I don't know that Professor Liberty Esquire is on tonight, but she is one of our regular Political Fixer family members, and I want to give her a special moment because she is someone who helped us prepare, as well as Coretta, who's on here. Sometimes she's also an attorney. She helped us prepare for this initiative, and I'm excited to lead in to what we're doing and then to ask for all of your help on how we can work together. I think we all, as very creative women and different minds with different backgrounds, we might have a plan for you. So I can't wait to see what you think of it. But allow me just about 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds to lead in here, because the lead in is going to set the stage. I want to go back in time to a motel room, a motel, a roadside motel in Virginia. I want you to pretend, in light of our time machine theme for this evening, that it's 1975. And on Route 1 in Virginia, You are staying at a roadside motel. Well, in that motel one night in 1975, there was a gentleman named John Paul Stevenson. Don't spoil it for the rest of the class if you studied this in your classes. And he was an unemployed truck driver down on his luck from Baltimore. And his brother in law was with him. He got an adjoining room next to him. And they started drinking outside of their motel rooms with a third guy. And they started getting this idea that they were going to get some quick cash and they were just going to leave everything behind. Forget this life. It wasn't going well for them. They were just going to leave. And they start drinking and talking about this. Well, about an hour later, something tragic happened. About an hour after that conversation, the hotel worker, Lillian Keller, was found beaten to death. $100 that was in the till was missing, and John Paul Stevenson's wallet was found laying next to her. There was a kitchen knife that had been wiped clean, and the towel with the blood on it was in the brother in law's room. So, if you guys watch true crime stories or you listen to crime podcasts, this wasn't the most complicated to solve. And in fact, it seemed to be a pretty open and shut case. And these two men were picked up in Minnesota just 4 days later. 4 days later. Okay. I'm seeing Nev saying that the tornado alarm went off. Please be safe. If you miss anything, Nev, just catch it on YouTube later. I promise it's not worth your safety. Get to a shelter. Okay, so let me tell you why I'm telling you this story from 1975. Because while the crime seemed to be an open and shut case, it has something to do with something we're experiencing right now because the case kept falling apart. The first trial, they convicted John Paul Stevenson, but the state trooper didn't have the shirt with the blood on it personally. He had to get it from Stevenson's wife, and no one watched him carry it. So there was a chain of custody issue. So the Supreme Court of Virginia threw out the conviction and ordered another trial. Then the second trial was set to start. And just before they were going to get started, after they had already picked all the jurors, one of the women on the jury fell extremely ill, apparently. And the judge is like, well, we don't have enough jurors. I guess this was before alternates. And so they declared a mistrial. So trial number two, completely busted. The third time this trial comes around and they're like, wait a second, this should not take this long. And so the defense, the attorney that's prosecuting this is like, we've got to just move forward no matter what. And the defense attorney is like, this story has been everywhere. We've already had two trials. Everyone knows about it. My client can't get a fair trial if we allow people in the courtroom. So the defense attorney made a request. He asked the judge, let's just close the courtroom. No press, no public, no one watching. And at first, the judge is like, okay, I can see leaving the public out of it because you want to keep the circus down. But this was his question. He says, how can you exclude the press who have been reporting on this story? And the attorney said, and this is a quote carried out throughout the years, if the media would just print all the facts, it wouldn't be so bad. But they pick out what they think is most eye appealing to the public. So they got to be left out. And the judge agreed. This was a shocking decision at the time. No accountability, no transparency, no one to oversee how the trial was being done in the 70s. Now, imagine you're a local journalist, you've been covering this story now. By now, it's been years, and suddenly the courtroom door is shut on your face. The local newspaper sued, and this is where it all starts to kind of come into today. This lawsuit makes its way all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, in this case, the First Amendment isn't just about the right to speak. It's about the right to listen, to watch, and to witness. So they ruled in the Supreme Court in a decision. I want to get the exact right decision for those of you that love to Google this stuff later, because I know some of you are like me and you like to look this stuff up. It was Richmond Newspapers v. Virginia. It was a 1980 case by the time it made it to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled that the public and the press have a constitutional right to access criminal trials because secrecy is a threat to democracy, especially when it comes to who gets punished and who gets protected. Why am I bringing this up? This case from the 1970s, this case that the Supreme Court decided in 1980. Because right now we are standing in front of our own set of closed doors. Right now, the public has been denied access to know who the people are who attacked and assaulted young girls and women in the Epstein files. We are being denied this. And let me tell you what that does. First of all, it means we have no oversight onto the idea of these victims actually getting a fair deal here. And we know for a fact that the first time they did not, that in Florida, the first time that Epstein was convicted, he got a sweetheart deal and they did everything behind closed doors. So we know that justice is not being served. Number two, there is a freedom of information in this country as it applies to the media and to the press, and is completely being violated and ignored right now. But there's something bigger here. We, particularly as women, and any of you who are parents of young girls, we do not know who these monsters are. And they have already shown what they're willing to do to women. These are men who have power, they have access. How many of them are sitting in boardrooms next to us? How many of them are playing in concert stadiums and fields, and we are having our daughters and ourselves wear their jerseys and cheer them on and give them more money to do this again? How many of them are making products that we purchase and we are funding what they're doing? How many of them are in seats of power passing laws that govern what we can do with our person, with our health, with our bodies? How many of them are in charge of laws that impact survivors of assault and abuse? There is a civil rights matter here that if we allow all of these men, and we believe it to be between 250 and 2,000 different men, what happens if the lesson is sent across the country that they can do this, that it's allowed? This, in my opinion, is a civil rights issue, and that by not releasing the files, I believe that we are placing all women and girls at a higher risk. I brought this idea to a few attorneys and they agreed. And that's why Equal Rights Now, which is an organization that I helped to found, thanks in large part to Sarah and the team, of course, Equal Rights Now is going to seek a class action lawsuit on behalf of different classes of women, as well as the parents of girls and concerned citizens, and suing the Department of Justice, demanding access to the Epstein files as a civil rights violation. This is something that I think we can do. Let me make my point on a couple of things, but I want to hear from you on this. All right. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous. I'm seeing a lot of hearts. We're already up to 42,000 likes. Sarah is sharing the website. Thank you, Sarah, for being on the ball as usual. Equalrightsnow.us. Equalrightsnow.us. Now, I'm going to interrupt myself here and tell you what you can do. Okay, you're the first to know this. The ink is still wet, so to speak, on the website. But if you go to equalrightsnow.us, you will see on the homepage very clearly the campaign, which we are calling Safety Over Secrets. That's Safety Over Secrets. And if you would like to sign on as a supporter, or if you believe that you meet one of the criteria of joining the class action lawsuit, we have all of the information there. It is safe. It is encrypted. It will never be sold or provided to anyone. The only way that your information is shared is if you make a public statement of support and give us permission to share it, or you say you're interested in moving forward and one of the members of a legal team reaches out to you. That is it. Other than that, this is completely under lock and key for obvious reasons with the way that women are treated when they come forward. Now, I'm going to tell you why we're doing this, but first, I want to tell you who can join in, and I'm going to give you some other ways that you can join in just a second. If you are a woman who works in a male-dominated industry, then you have a disproportionate right to know what is going on, because it is more likely that there is a man sitting next to you that is on this list or who is taking his cue from this list and the activities that happened on it. So if you are a woman who has worked in or works in a male dominated industry, that is one of the classes that the attorneys say have a high standing here. If you are a survivor of assault, harassment, or abuse, then you have standing here. We know that these are serial acts, that most men do not do this once, one time, one night, that this is how they treat women. And I call into Exhibit A the guy in the Oval Office right now. This is a serial behavior, and not prosecuting this or even exposing them publicly, this makes us all less safe. So if you are someone who is a survivor, like myself, of abuse or assault, then you are definitely someone who could join this class. If you are a parent or a caregiver of girls, many of these young women were underage, then this is a continued behavior. What happened to those girls? I'm trying to keep it a little PG 13 here, because I know some of you listen to this program while you're driving or when you're making dinner or things. So if you are a parent of young girls, it is not difficult to see how they are placed in disproportionate harm if this behavior is allowed to continue. Marlene is bringing up financial records. Yes, we are going to be reaching out to Senator Durbin and others and asking about those financial records and where they lead. User 926 asks a great question, and it's amazing. You're reading my mind, user 926. People who signed non disclosure agreements. We cannot guarantee anything, and I am not an attorney, but the lawyers that I have spoken to and others who are volunteering who are attorneys are saying they will review those. There have been some developments in non disclosure law under the Biden administration in particular. And a lot of times people think non disclosure agreements mean one thing. They are instruments of fear and intimidation. And we can ask them to review that at no charge. We are working with a legal team to do that. We're building all of this up. These are very new conversations. And again, I am not an attorney, but we did try to think of you when you were doing that. And so I'm really sorry in advance, user. Whatever happened where they felt like you needed to sign one and you now regret doing so, I just want to say sincerely, I'm sorry. And one way or another, we're here for you. Um, okay, another thing. So we talked about parents and caregivers of girls, but any supporter who is a woman or who just believes for under you just believe in equal protection under the law, then you are welcome to sign up. There are no guarantees. We do not know what's going to happen with this. We are challenging a patriarchal, corrupt system here. But even if you can't join the lawsuit, if you want to issue a statement of support later or what have you, it still matters. Um, so someone asked me, do I think Acosta, oh, Jeff Clark says, does Acosta have remorse for the sweetheart deal? Considering it got him appointed in the first administration under 45, I doubt it. Cassandra says, I will support you. Thank you. I sincerely appreciate you. However, please don't look at it as supporting me, though I definitely need and love your support. I'm trying to do something on behalf of these other women who are watching this happen. Many of you might be familiar with some of the victims that have been named. Some of them have been brave enough to come forward. Some of them have even come forward and used their names. One of them, Stephanie, took her own life fairly recently. And this is something that we know that voices are silenced constantly. And we also know, Equal Rights Now was established to help get the Equal Rights Amendment in the Constitution once and for all, for women to finally be equal citizens in United States law, which we are not. We are second class citizens. And we're seeing that in so many different ways, in the way that the laws are passed and how we're treated. I learned a new stat the other day. Did you know that women are over 70% more likely to be injured in car accidents because when they do safety ratings for cars, you don't have to use women crash test dummies? Just so many ways, large and small, that we are looked past. That if we are harmed, who cares? And if we had an equal rights amendment, they by law could not do that. They would have to go out of their way to make sure that we were treated equally and that more harm was not coming to us. So that's how this organization started. And we are continuing that work. And if you want to know more, go to equalrightsnow.us. We actually have a plan to get this across the finish line during the next Congress, and it needs your help. So that's right there as well. But let me go back to this topic. Why this? Here's the thing. Equal rights and fighting for equal rights is about fighting for systemic change. And right now, there if you have someone who is suspected of a crime, a regular crime, their face is on the news so fast. If they've committed multiple crimes, they're on the post office wall, they're on America's Most Wanted, the FBI issues alerts, right? If you have people that have committed crimes, most of the time, what happens? If there is a reasonable suspicion of that crime, then for the public safety, that name is released. People will say, the police are like, we're trying to find this person. Help us find this person. We've all seen that. And yet, we know crimes have been committed here. The people that help facilitate those crimes have already been successfully prosecuted. There are financial records. There is witness testimony naming names. There are photos. There is surveillance. They are on a private island, many of them, with flight logs. We know they committed these crimes, or at least we have a very strong suspicion, and yet they remain hidden. This goes against American law, in our opinion, and it goes against what normally happens for the societal good. Why? Because it only impacts women and young girls. That's why. If this was happening to men, and men were disappearing and men were being abused, their names would be everywhere. These perpetrators would be everywhere. It is only women and girls that are allowed to silently disappear by the hundreds of thousands. So, this we believe is about making sure that institutions no longer silence women and girls and treat us as expendable. Right now, they are choosing to protect predators over protecting women. They are choosing to make sure that the predators' lives aren't disrupted. And meanwhile, at least 200 girls' lives directly were ruined that we know of. And on top of that, what does this do in other cases? How likely is someone to come forward? What happens when you report the abuse? What happened in the Diddy case? What happened in countless other cases? We know the odds, we know the statistics, and they're getting smaller every day. And this is a crime that disproportionately impacts women and girls. And that's why we believe that it is a civil rights issue and that it is an equal rights issue. And so we got this idea. We went to a few attorneys and said, can this work? And they said, actually, maybe. So this is what we're asking from you. We want you to weigh in. Okay, so if you go to equalrightsnow.us, then you can sign up and show your support. This again, very, very new. We're going to be releasing a TikTok video and announcing it to the rest of the world tomorrow. The name of the campaign is Safety Over Silence. If you're going to post about it, we ask that you use that hashtag. We reserve the domain names safetyoversilence.com and .org. We're going to be creating social graphics and putting data there and sharing information. If you want to volunteer, if you want to post things, if you know someone, we're trying to show that this matters. And we also want to get this in front of the media. I am a political strategist. That's how many of you got to know me. That's what brought you here when we first started becoming a political fixer family about a year ago. And I understand how the gamesmanship matters. It's interesting. Real lives are impacted by who's in power. All of that is important. But talking about whether or not someone's on the list, talking about the political fallout of this, talking about what might happen if this person does this and says this person's name, that is still centering men and the perpetrators as the heart of this scandal. And it's not acceptable. We need to turn the focus on the truth of who was harmed. Instead of talking about who might be harmed in the future, we know who was harmed. Not nearly enough people are telling the stories of the victims. Not nearly enough women are being protected in the future. We're doing absolutely nothing to make sure that girls are safe. And I know this might seem like a little bit of a tangent here, but when you have those like trad wife communes in Arkansas, how well do you think those young women are being treated? Right? Like, this isn't about, oh, I just chose a different life. We know how this works, that when women are valued as less than, they are abused. It's the same recipe of hate over and over and over again. I also, just one quick thing before I continue with this. So, equalrightsnow.us, please, please, please. Shakespeare is asking, is the volunteer page going to be up soon? Yes, we will have a volunteer page. However, if you go to the contact us page, we'd love to hear from you now. Lynn is mentioning the Handmaid's Tale. Edna is saying, I hope they don't pardon Ghislaine Maxwell because she isn't a victim. The more I did not want to know about that woman. I started looking into it more because she was kind of not on my radar until this whole matter was, and the details of that victim testimony you cannot unread. To say she's not a victim is the least of it. She is a monster. And if we're going to demand equality, then yes, she just happens to be a female monster, but she is a monster nonetheless. Um, so Alice is saying correct, making it too much about politics. This is more than politics. Thank you, Lori, for the kind gifts. Um, so, you know, Bart brings up a good point. We need a better political strategist because this ain't working. I could do a whole tangent on how awful political consultants are, including one that I spoke to today. And I'm going to be kind and not name him, but I started calling candidates and asking their campaigns if they wanted to go on the record about how they feel about these files being released on behalf of women. And one of the campaign strategists was extremely derogatory about how we didn't deserve to know, we don't have legal standing, and that women should stay out of it and we shouldn't even try. So that was super fun and actually kept me going and coughing up to get ready in time for this show. Um, all right. What can you do besides sign up and show your support? So, we're going to be adding social graphics. We would love any ideas that you have for social graphics. If you're going to use the hashtag, you don't need to wait for anything from me, but we're happy to provide you with data and statistics. We're going to be doing that in the coming, like tomorrow. This is what my life is trying to get as much of that to you as possible. If you want to post, if you want to privately ask people if they want to show support, if you have a podcast or a local newspaper or a blog and we can somehow contribute to that and get the word out, please let us know. So you can go to equalrightsnow.us. If that is jammed up for whatever reason, you can always go to politicalfixer.com, and we're more than happy to hear from you there as well. James Talrico says we are worried about the wrong 1%. Yes, CJ, you're absolutely right. And Kelly, I want to give you a shout out because I know that you, as part of the Political Fixer family, have been online as well. Um, I want to know what your thoughts are about proceeding with a civil action claim against the Department of Justice. Is this something that could work? Is this something where we can force the right judge to release the names of the perpetrators? And if not, is there any benefit to doing it anyway? Is there a benefit for taking this as far as we can and at least trying to change the conversation and the narrative and making them tell us that we don't deserve to know who is actively harming women and girls? I would also point out that I contend these are not all past actions. The people that were the facilitators before may not be among us because they are in prison or they have perished, but that doesn't mean that the actions stopped. It doesn't mean that suddenly all of the girls are safe. I want to give you one other quick update, and we'll be talking about this a lot more over the coming days. This happened right before I got on the air. But 47 was interviewed apparently as he was getting on Air Force One. I believe he was on his way back from Scotland on his way to the UK. Don't quote me on that, but he was quoted, and I heard the audio myself twice today. They asked him about his fallout with Epstein because they were very close friends, supposedly for years and years. We've been hearing about the birthday card, we've seen the photos, etc. And there was an infamous quote unquote falling out. And just today, 47 said on audio that was recorded in front of the press, he was describing Epstein stealing girls that worked for him at Mar-a-Lago and the spa. I would encourage you, again, not in front of children, to listen to this audio. You can, it's on Air Force One, you can see this. And he was specifically asked if the woman, Stephanie, forgive me, I think her name is Guffrey, if she was among the women who worked at Mar-a-Lago. Keep in mind, she was either 16 or 17 at the time, according to witness testimony and her own sworn statements. And 47 was asked, was she one of the Mar-a-Lago employees in the spa that you were aware of that Epstein stole? And he said, yes, I believe she was. He states, let's give this man every benefit of the doubt that he absolutely does not deserve, because it requires not only a dispense of belief, but also of intellect. But just for sake of discussion, let's say that he committed absolutely no crime himself. He never participated. He was restrained with women. He never crossed that line. Let's just say that. But for years, you knew your friend was a predator, you knew what was going on, and you looked the other way. And now you've said you wish Ghislaine Maxwell well. He said that publicly, I wish her well, and that you're considering a pardon. If what he says is true, and he is completely innocent of the crimes, he is guilty of an egregious lack of ethics and empathy, and he is sending the most dangerous signal of all about women and girls and what our lives are worth. No matter what, this is unacceptable, but from a legal perspective, he just admitted prior knowledge. He just admitted prior knowledge, which is, he's showing he is concealing this. He's showing that he knows more than he said, and he is actively concealing this. I think, again, not an attorney, I think we can do this. I think we can approach this from a different way, which is a civil rights violation. And maybe, just maybe, we can actually get people to care enough to start talking about what we can do to protect women and girls in the future. That's my humble wish. My humble wish. Equalrightsnow.us. Having some trouble getting comments to come through. Oh, there we go. Heather Cook says, 100% he admitted prior knowledge of so many things, and he is turning over so many things that he did say. Absolutely. Um, Edna is bringing up, does anyone know that 47's first wife accused him of, yes, and then later took it back? Yes, again. Heather Cook also mentioned he was hiring, meaning Epstein was hiring minors at the spa, as was 47 was hiring the minors to begin with at a spa. Very good point, Heather. Worth bringing up. Square Foot Gardening for You says he also said, I did not have the quote privilege of going to Epstein's island. Jeff Clark asked, did Maxwell facilitate stealing the staff? I'm not going to say out loud what exactly Maxwell did to procure and to groom these young women, but I've read some of the testimony in the last 48 hours, and it goes so much beyond that. So yes, stealing staff, and then stealing childhoods and mental sanity on top of that. Cindy Cunningham brings up a good point. Virginia Guffrey had a different name back then. We could spend an entire episode talking about the inconsistencies of 47 statements with this. I appreciate that. Is it Moya with all the symbols is correcting me on Virginia Guffrey's name? Yes, I have not had enough um, caffeine. Um, so listen, I understand this is an uphill battle. It's going to be a lot of information to put in one place. We want to talk about the legal standing and the precedent. We're preparing all of these case files and things to show. And let me tell you why we're doing that. Because they want us to think that we can't. The government right now wants us to think of them like we used to think about Elon Musk. All rich, almighty, all powerful, can't be stopped. Elon Musk got down on his luck for less than 3 months, and he's already like just a laughing stock. This American government, it saddens me how weak it has gotten. It saddens me how many of these institutions are becoming laughing stocks around the world. But you know what? It also shows me that we can take them on. I firmly believe that. And we at least have to try. So again, I believe that we cannot allow them to tell us that this is impossible. I think that public interest has already shown um, that it can override secrecy documents involving a president. For those of you that decide to look into this, if you're not history buffs, which I'm not naturally a history buff, but I'm trying to catch up, Richard Nixon. A lot of those Watergate records were sealed, and then in another Supreme Court case, they said that Richard Nixon's, even though Watergate was embarrassing and even though it had to do with the administration, they had to be unsealed. There is precedent for this. Also, I want to point out that civil court cases have long been a tool for societal change. I know it's not something that I am an expert in except for as a social justice advocate. But when you start thinking about what happened with Me Too and how that opened up some changes and how we look at things and in workplace environments, those were civil cases that opened the floodgates to a sea change. Again, we're somewhat going backwards on some of it, but it did kickstart a movement. Brown versus Board of Education. I am definitely not trying to compare what is happening in this situation with what happened in Brown versus Board of Education, or what continues apparently to happen to the Black communities and the Brown communities in America. But I will say that we have seen that civil cases have seismically changed and forced people towards equality, not to it, but towards it. And there's also different cases that are out there with human rights abuses, even prisons that have been sued successfully about how they have to treat prisoners better. They're counting on us to be confused and scared and weak. They're counting on bullying those who have been the most harmed. And I think that all of us coming together, we can stand up um, for ourselves and for our daughters, but also for them, for those that don't feel like they can speak up from what happened before, and for those of you who might believe now that you're alone and you can't speak up currently. We owe this to you. So let's at least try to make it happen, and let's see what we can do. I really value you. I see that page 852 is asking for more examples of cases. Absolutely. Cassandra says, I think it matters. Love you for saying that. I know this is a tough topic, and I hadn't necessarily planned on charging right at the angry monster, but I can't look away. So I'm asking for all of you to go on this adventure with me. So please, if you can, go to equalrightsnow.us. In the coming days and weeks, there will be much more, but we are starting now. We are just diving in. We're not going to let perfect be the enemy of the good. The domain names are being set up now, but the domains are safetyoversecrets.com or .org, safetyoversecrets, and the hashtag is safety over secrets. We're going to be searching for that hashtag. If you want to tag me at Political Fixer, you're more than welcome to. Please don't feel like you have to, but if you want to, if we see your video or your Facebook or your Instagram or your Blue Sky or any of that stuff, just let us know. Send it to us, tag us, or use the hashtag safety over secrets, and we will do our best to amplify you. If you have suggestions on what we need to make this more effective, we may have thought of it, we may have not. Again, we're undercaffeinated and overworked like many of you, so don't assume that we've thought of everything. We want your knowledge and your ideas just as much as we want your voices. And I can't thank you enough. Karen is already ahead of me. Yes, safety over secrets t-shirts. We've got some in the works. You're so good, Karen. But if you've got some designs in mind, send them over. And if you know any artists that want to create stuff, we are happy to pay them for anything that sells. So if you know some artists that are really good at graphics and they want to make some stuff that is pro women, pro safety, safety over secrets, let us know. Again, you can go to equalrightsnow.us or you can go to politicalfixer.com. And then I'm also, good news, the bug on my TikTok maybe has been fixed. And so now I can get my direct messages again. Again, maybe. So I'm going to try to do that tonight after the show and tomorrow as well. Um, Marlene, we got you covered with the V-neck. I've also got the teens and college students covered with the hoodies because it does not matter the temperature or the heat dome. Those kids still wear hoodies. Heather, we want your help. I know that you have quite a powerful platform. And so, yes, absolutely. And if there's anyone I can talk to or any groups, this is important. So, anything that I can do. Heather says she has designers. Yay. Okay, this is going to be fun, everyone. I mean, it's serious. Um, it's serious. But here's the thing, everything gets brighter when you're doing it with friends. That's just the truth. Everything gets brighter when you're doing it with friends. And I got to tell you, um, I love you, Hoosier Mama. Yes, absolutely. I want to meet activist Mike's daughter, who's a graphic designer. Any and all, absolutely welcome. And we're happy to profile them, to pay them for their designs as they sell any of that. Joe Eclectic reminds me that joy is a resistance to joy and advocacy. This was hard over the last couple of days. I will tell you, I'm going to come forward more with some of my story over the coming days and weeks. I have said before that I am an abuse survivor. I have said before that I'm an assault survivor. I've made just a couple of TikToks about that, particularly when things got a little tough during the campaign. I'm very grateful that I am in a situation of love and support, so much support. All of you, my family, my friends that are like my family, I have so much support that is just a phone call or a TikTok or a YouTube click away with real people that are there for me. And yet, reading all of this and seeing all of this and recalling some of my own stories, I definitely, it took its toll. And so I was very nervous coming on tonight. I was actually a couple minutes late for those of you that joined, because it's hard. It's still hard, even with all of that support. But you guys make it easier, and the difficulty reminds me that if it's hard for me, just think how it is for other people that have less support, that don't feel heard, that don't feel seen. So it drives me to just push and do better and do more. I agree that we're better together in community, Joe. Thank you for that. This is a very special community, and I'm just so grateful for all of you. I appreciate all of you. Thank you, Cassandra. I want to do a couple more shout outs, and then I know I kept you late, but we had a lot going on here. I do want to thank, we talked about some of our political fixer family members, and I mentioned you briefly, but I definitely want to take a moment and thank Square Foot Gardening and Marlene ML. So many of you are I see Marquet on there. We've got so many different people that just join us week after week, or when you can join us, even though maybe this is one of your first times, you were just so active and so kind. This was some tough subject matter that we covered in about an hour and a half, 90 minutes, and we're at already 74,000 likes. So staying positive. Punky, so good to see you. I'm so glad you're on there. Again, I love Punky's hearts because every time I'm like, oh, look, it's Punky. And for any of you that grew up with Punky Brewster, that has like even more special meaning. Uh, all right, I'm going to let you go live your lives, but you have homework. 3 things. Number 1, please go to equalrightsnow.us. Let this be a spark that kindles a flame that they cannot ignore. That's my first request. Number 2, whether you do it on Equal Rights US, equalrights.us, as in us, as in United States, equalrightsnow.us. Thank you, Sarah, for correcting me. Equalrightsnow.us. Whether you do that or you go to politicalfixer.com, which is easier, and we're going to be putting everything there for you to link as well. I want to hear your suggestions of what you need, tools that you have, tools that would make your life easier to share this, spread this. If you know someone that, whatever's the fastest, do not pass go. Find us at politicalfixer.com or equalrightsnow.us. Just use the contact form or the phone number. That's actually our phone number. There's actually humans, usually Sarah, that are right there to take your calls and your questions, as well as email addresses if you get the inkling to do so at 2 or 3 in the morning to reach out to us. And then the third thing I want you to do is, whether it's this or the racism or the misogyny or the bigotry or the idiocy, I almost said idiotry. You could tell I'm tired. Whatever it is, we can try to laugh, but it is serious and it's tough. And so I want to make sure that you take a few moments and take care of yourselves and take care of each other. That is your third bit of homework, but it's arguably the most important. I Thank you all. Alice, it's so good. Thank you so much. Jeff Clark, thank you so much for helping with the domain. Man, we should hire you. Um, and we appreciate you too. Who's your mama? So appreciate you. And J Robot and Sarah, we cannot do this broadcast without you. I'd also like to Joe Eclectic made me laugh. Thank all the moderators because I know some of the trolls have been in full force. Have a wonderful evening. Definitely tell your friends. If you sign up for equalrightsnow.us, we'll keep you informed of things. And if you already gave or signed up to equalrightsnow.us on the other constitutional cause, you'll be receiving an update on this in your email boxes imminently as well. I will see you all next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Central, for the next Political Fixer Live. I'll be coming right off the stage of another event, so bear with me as my inevitable lack of grace with that transition. But I will see you next week, Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And in the meantime, let's not be strangers. Let's get to work, Political Fixer family. Safety over silence. We can do this. Let's go take a few predators down. That could be fun homework. All right. Talk to you all soon. Thank you, Team Catherine. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Renee. Oh, I love it. So many favorites here.